So on a statewide issue, the best political news that's happened in a long time is that Mr. Larry Hamm is running for Senate. There's been some other big news. There's the Economic Development Authority scandal going on, and a group that's risen in opposition to that called Take Back New Jersey. That has to do with George Norcross and his political influence down in South Jersey. That's been in the news a lot. If you haven't kept up with that, I encourage you to look into that. What I'm going to talk about today, though, is something that's a little more under the radar, and that's the redistricting process that's going to happen. You know, the great constitutional paradigm of this country is that the power is vested in the people. The people have the power in this country. And our Constitution has provisions for a process called redistricting, where the states are granted the power and the authority to redraw the lines that create the election districts for Congress and for state legislature. And actually, the power is actually vested in the state legislature, right? And the idea being that the state legislature would best represent and defend the wishes and the interests and the general welfare of the people they represent, which is a great idea in theory.
I wasn't sure you were going to get through that without.
Meanwhile, our state constitution, which was last drafted 73 years ago in 1947, also addresses redistricting, but it takes a bit of a different approach. The state constitution, in concert with other actions taken by the legislature, has granted the power of redistricting solely and permanently to the Democratic and Republican party bosses and politicians. The redistricting process has become one of political gamesmanship, horse trading, and backroom deals, with the primary goal of keeping incumbents of both parties in office. Basically, we have the politicians picking who their voters will be instead of the voters choosing their elected officials. What we see is a group of legislators and political bosses who put their own self-interest and the interests of their financial backers ahead of the will and the interests of the people. There are many problems with our political system. This one is both important and urgent, as the census will be taken this year, and the first round of redistricting in New Jersey will happen in 2021. So what can we do? Well, the answer is, as it always is, we got to get involved. Right? There's a group called the Fair Districts New Jersey Movement, which is part of the League of Women Voters of New Jersey. And they have a petition on their website, and there's some information on the table and floating around. But they basically have several principles that they want to demand from our state legislators in the redistricting process. The first is independence. Right now, the party bosses assign or select people for the redistricting commission and write the rules, write the maps that will be used. The demand is to have a citizens panel with no political bosses and no incumbent politicians involved in the redistricting process. Second is transparency, something that is lacking all over our state, in our counties and our local governments, and that's to have open redistricting meetings where the meetings are open to the public, and that there's public hearings, a lot of public hearings held over the course of the process to review the plans as they're being developed. And then a third principle is one of equity, and this is about protecting communities of interest. And community of interest is defined as any sort of natural or organic group of folks that might live in a certain area, have a certain set of principles or certain characteristics, sometimes racial characteristics, income characteristics. Black and brown people especially have been victimized by gerrymandering, and so we need to maintain equity for all our citizens in this process, right? So that's really just what I came up to talk about, is that the redistricting is happening, it's happening soon, and we need to get involved to put pressure on our legislature to get a fair outcome so that the state legislature that we have now does not have the ability to just keep themselves in power over and over again. And so the group is called, another group is called Take Back New Jersey, and the slogan that we're using is Unplug the Machine. So it's time to unplug the machine and take back New Jersey.